Hello and welcome back to our course on Shakespeare. Today I want to discuss Shakespeare's King Lear. And before you start this video lecture, please create an overview of the play's characters and the play's plot by yourself. So please pause the video now, create an overview of characters and plot, and then please resume the video. When we look at the characters in King Lear, we see a parallel character constellation. On the one hand, we have King Lear and his three daughters Goneril, Regan and Cordelia that are married to Albany, Cornwall and the King of France. On the other hand, we have Gloucester and his two sons Edgar and Edmund. And then there are two other important characters, the Earl of Kent and the Fool. Now I have just said that we have two parallel character constellations. So the plot of King Lear consists of two parallel plots. The question first of all is, what are parallel plots? Parallel plots are two or more separate chains of events that are presented and somehow linked in a literary work. What does that mean in King Lear? In King Lear we have a main plot, the plot that deals with King Lear and his actions and destiny, and there's a second plot, the plot that deals with Gloucester and his actions and destiny. And this second plot mirrors the first and the main plot. So let's have a look at these two plots. What we can see is King Lear has three daughters, Gloucester has two sons. Both characters commit an error. They trust the wrong children. They are both punished for their decision. Lear becomes mad, Gloucester becomes blind. And both realize their mistakes too late, so both die in the end. I've just mentioned that these characters die, so King Lear at the end is a tragedy. King Lear is one of Shakespeare's most popular tragedies. The question is, what is a tragedy? There's of course a very simple definition of tragedy, a play full of disastrous events, the situation turns from good to bad, and there's a sorrowful ending. But there are of course more advanced definitions of tragedy. And those that I want to discuss are based on three different concepts. The first is the fall of the mighty. We have a powerful character such as a king that loses his previously high position. There's a second concept, the idea of an inescapable working of destiny. So the idea is that it's simply fate that makes the characters suffer. The characters cannot escape their fate. And there's a third concept, the idea of the misjudgment of a character in the face of an exceptional situation. So the protagonist commits an error when faced with extraordinary problems. So three concepts, the fall of the mighty, the inescapable workings of destiny, and the misjudgment in the face of an exceptional situation. Okay, let's try to apply these concepts to King Lear. What we can of course see is the fall of a mighty character, King Lear. The characters themselves several times refer to destiny. Lear, for example, claims towards the end of the play that he's the natural fool of fortune. And I've already mentioned that the characters commit errors in judgment, Lear and Gloucester. Yet the question now is, and please think about this, so pause the video and think about the question, which of these concepts is dominant in King Lear? So on which concept is the play mainly based? So please pause the video now, think about the question, take notes, and then please resume the video. If we have a closer look at the play, we can see the fall of a mighty character, but this, I would say, is only on the surface. The characters refer to destiny, but this is something that Edmund, interestingly, describes as evasion. Evasion simply means that they are avoiding the problem. So what is the problem? What causes all the problems? What causes the chaos in the play? And I would say the main problem is poor judgment, as one of the characters mentions in the play, right at the beginning. Poor judgment. In other words, most of the problems might have been avoided if some of the protagonists had not committed these errors. So if they had thought about their actions more carefully. And I would say this is the basic concept of tragedy that we can find in this play. So fall of a mighty character, okay, yes, we see that in the play. The characters refer to destiny, yes, but as I just said, and I would agree with that, with the character of Edmund, this is an evasion, they just avoid the problem. The characters themselves create the problems based on poor judgment. Okay, let's talk about another important topic in King Lear, namely gender and patriarchy. Because the thing is, what I did so far, I mainly or exclusively talked about the male characters. But King Lear is not only about men, there are female characters in the play and they play an important role in King Lear. So when I was referring to the Lear and to the Gloucester plots, I was simplifying the play, and I was also in danger of presenting a rather traditional, a patriarchal interpretation of the play. So again, a task for you. What do you think about the behavior of the female characters in the play? And what, first of all, does the term patriarchy mean? So please think about these questions, pause the video, take a few notes, and then please resume the video. First of all, what does patriarchy mean? Patriarchy is a social and cultural order in which men are dominant, in which men are in power, and women are in a rather powerless position. The question is, how does patriarchy work? Patriarchy defines certain norms of behavior for men and women. This is what we commonly call gender roles. Gender roles are socially and culturally defined roles for men and women. For women, this means that their gender role is defined as being passive, obedient, pure. And importantly, most importantly maybe, every behavior that is not according to these expectations is considered as being problematic and as being a danger to the social and cultural order. And it is frequently punished. For example, women that do not behave according to expectations are, for example, socially excluded. The question for us is, how does the patriarchal order manifest itself in King Lear? So how is it important in King Lear? First of all, what we can see is that men are in power. I mean, that's quite a simple statement. Lear or the female characters' husbands, Albany, for example. Women, on the other hand, are in a powerless position or they have to struggle for power. Secondly, one female character, namely Cordelia, the third daughter, is presented as an ideal woman of patriarchy. She behaves as an obedient daughter. Thirdly, what we can see is that the other female characters, Goneril and Regan, that do not correspond to the traditional female gender role, are presented as problematic characters, at least, this is important, at least at first glance. They seem to be highly problematic in the play. So, what I just said is, or what I just tried to answer is the question, how does the patriarchal order manifest itself in this play? We see men are in power, women are in a powerless position, one woman represents the ideal of a woman in patriarchy, and two of the other female characters seem to be very problematic. But the question now is, does the play King Lear support or criticize the patriarchal system? And I would say that there are arguments for both sides, and I don't want to decide that for you. I think you should decide yourself which arguments are more convincing to you. So I will just present some arguments. Some arguments that support the idea that King Lear supports the patriarchal system, and some arguments against this thesis. So arguments that the play supports patriarchy. The play emphasizes the significance of a stable order, and there are two women, Goneril and Regan, that seem to be made responsible for all the chaos in the play. They disregard Lear's will, and this seems to be, at first glance, the problem. How does the play do this? The play does this by directing our sympathy towards Lear and away from Goneril and Regan. So they are shown as very unpleasant characters. Again, what is the idea here? The idea is Goneril and Regan seem to be responsible for all the chaos. Something that we have to question, of course, but at first glance, Goneril and Regan seem to be responsible for the chaos. How can the play do this? At the beginning I said, Lear and Gloucester commit errors in judgment. We could argue they are responsible, but the play manages to put us into a position as audience or reader to assume that Goneril and Regan are responsible for the chaos. How does the play do this? I repeat, it directs our sympathy towards Lear because he is such a poor and suffering character in the course of the play, and it directs our sympathy away from Goneril and Regan that seem to be very unpleasant characters. But I just mentioned this. By doing this, the play conceals the fact that it was actually Lear and it was also Gloucester that decided and that started all the disruption of the social order. On top of that, there's one woman that the play wants us to sympathize with, namely Cordelia, and she actually attempts to restore patriarchy. She tries to restore her father's rule. This is another argument to say, yeah, if we sympathize with Cordelia and she is in favor of patriarchy, the play supports patriarchy in the end. But there are also arguments that support the idea that the play criticizes patriarchy. The main idea is that the play shows us women in a powerless position, so they are dependent on men. And one could argue that they are accordingly justified in their resistance. The two elder daughters are now in power, and of course they do everything to keep this power, to stay in this position. Who wouldn't? So please try to understand this argument. How does the play criticize patriarchy? There's an argument. The argument is the play shows us women in a powerless position, dependent on men. Now, finally, two of them are in power. They never want to come back to this powerless position. Of course they resist. And this could be used as an argument to say the play criticizes patriarchy. But as I said at the beginning, I do not want to make a decision for you. Please think about the arguments and then decide yourself. So let's continue with another topic that is closely linked to what I just said, namely the topic of order and disorder in King Lear. I hope you remember that at the beginning of the course, we discussed the issues of order and disorder. We referred to the Elizabethan world picture, and we said that this world picture is based on a hierarchical and fixed order. And one of the main fears, we said, one of the main fears of that period was the fear of disorder. So a disruption of the order of things. What we can see in King Lear is a disruption of order in human society. And we see attempts by some of the characters, I would mention Kent mainly, Edgar and Albany in the end, attempts by those characters to return to a stable order. What we also found out at the beginning of the course is that the various systems or parts of the Elizabethan world picture mirror each other. For example, we said human society and the larger cosmic order. And I already mentioned at the beginning of the course that we will come back to that when we discuss King Lear. This is what I'm doing now. When we have a look at King Lear, we can see that disorder in human society is mirrored in the larger cosmic order. Just think about the storm in Act 3. Human society and disordered human society. Think about the king, King Lear, alone in the storm. So disorder in human society is reflected in the cosmic order, the storm. They kind of mirror each other. But the question is not only, is there order or disorder at the beginning or in the course of the play? The question, or one of the most important questions is, do we assume that the former, so the old order, is restored in the end? This means simply, does the play come back to that old order in the end? So what do you think about that? And the next question, closely related to that, I would say, and this connects the topic of order and disorder again to the topic of gender and patriarchy. The next question is Goneril's and Regan's death a just solution in the play? So again, a task for you. Please think about that. Pause the video and think about the questions. Do you think whether the old order is restored in the end? Does the play come back to that? And do you think that it is fair what happens to Goneril and Regan towards the end of the play? Please pause now, think about it, and then resume. So the first question, is the former order restored? And again, we have two strands of argument. On the one hand, we can say that the audience is certainly not left with an impression of the former and stable order at the end of the play. Just think what you have witnessed when you read the play. We have seen death and destruction throughout the play. And the older generation in the end has all but disappeared. Being left with such an impression, I think it might be hard to feel something like relief in the end, that there's something like a former or stable order in the end. We are left with the impression of death and chaos and destruction. So this could be an argument to say no, the former order is not restored, simply because the audience or the reader might not get this impression. On the other hand, what we can say is the political order has been restored. The war has ended. Power is in the hands now of Albany, and there is the perspective at least of a clear hierarchy. And the patriarchal order is also in place again. Female resistance has been eliminated. The female characters are simply dead. So the patriarchal order is as it was at the beginning. So these are arguments that we could use in order to say, yes, the former and the old, the stable order has been restored. The fact, however, that the play returns to the former patriarchal order could also be seen as an argument that the play supports patriarchy. Just think about the question that we had 10 minutes ago. Does the play support patriarchy? The fact that the play returns to the patriarchal order in the end could be used as an argument to say, yes, the play supports patriarchy. Yet, This also begs the question, is the death of Goneril and Regan a just solution in the play? It returns to patriarchal order by simply getting rid of all the resistant female characters. Is this a just solution in the play? If we accept the play's distribution of sympathy, as I said at the beginning, the play directs our sympathy towards Lear and away from these two characters. If we accept this, then we might have to reply with yes, death of these two characters is just and justified. The condition is that we accept the distribution of sympathy. But if we assume that it was actually Lear that started all the chaos, and that the two women are struggling, simply struggling, to free themselves from patriarchal rule, then we might have to answer, no, it is not justified. We do not agree. But again, this is up to you. I only offer arguments, and what I want you to do is think about it. Think about what you think and decide on your own. I don't want to convince you. Think about it and find your own position. Okay, thanks for watching. We will be back soon with another video. Then I will discuss Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet.